Another Friday means it's time to get to some questions from the listeners.
You are Locked On Royals, your daily Kansas City Royals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are tuned into another edition of Locked On Royals and the Locked On Podcast Network. As always, I'm your host, Jack Johnson, and you can find me on Twitter or X at JohnnyJ_15. That's at JOHNYJ_15. You also can find us on wherever you get your podcast. That can be Spotify, Apple Podcast, Amazon Music, Google Podcast. We're on Odyssey and YouTube. Just be sure to hit that follow button and subscribe. If you're a first-time listener and you want to know a little bit more about me and this show, I am based here in Kansas City. I work at Sports Radio 810 WHB, doing some hosting, some co-hosting, a little bit of producing as well. But when it comes to this podcast, when you click on this link, you know that you're going to be getting 30 straight minutes of Royals baseball. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. From big upsets to game-winning drives, the NFL playoffs are better with FanDuel, where new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets, guaranteed, win or lose. Visit FanDuel.com to get started today. We got a lot of questions to get into, both from Twitter and from YouTube, so I don't want to waste any time. To begin the show here, I feel like we've got some really good questions in regards to what the Royals can do for the rest of the offseason. So let's kick things off here with Cody. Could the Royals go after Jake Meyers from Houston? I actually really do think that a guy like Jake Meyers would fit in Kansas City, and I know that the Astros have a little bit of a roster crunch when it comes to the outfield, but Jake Meyers to me would be a pretty good platoon bat for Kyle Isbell, because Jake Meyers goes from the right side, of course, Kyle Isbell from the left side. But to me, Jake Meyers is one of those players that, the numbers, the eye test aren't really going to stand out to you, but I do think is kind of the right-handed hitting Kyle Isbell, and I think would very much be affordable. Last year, a 1.7 WAR for Houston, 13 home runs, 219 average, but over the course of his career has been pretty consistent. The 4 years that he's been in Houston, I think he's pretty much been the same player. Now, on-base numbers, not really good. So I think what I go back to is with the Royals acquiring Joey Wiemer, that to me feels like the right-handed platoon bat for Kyle Isbell. So if they didn't have Joey Wiemer, I think Jake Meyers would make a lot of sense for Kansas City because he would be affordable, good defense, kind of similar numbers to Kyle Isbell. But since Joey Wiemer was acquired in that India Singer deal, I think that Joey Wiemer will probably be that guy that'll be the platoon bat for Isbell in the outfield, or for a couple guys in the outfield that hit from the left side. Next one here, as soon as I can pull this back up, because we did have about 20 questions on Twitter, and as soon as this thing loads in, should be able to get the next question here. I'm stalling as best as I possibly can. Okay, this one comes from Chris. I want an outfielder. Why won't they go get an outfielder with Pop? It's not they're not trying. I do feel like the market this offseason has been a little bit stale. It's been very cold, and the asking price on some of these guys is pretty high, especially if you're trying to go the trade route. A good player that impacts this lineup isn't going to be easy to go out there and just acquire. I mean, if it was simple, everybody would be going out there and grabbing some of the top guys out there on the trade market. So the Royals are trying to be patient and wait for some of those prices to come down. And I think since it's still January 10th, January 11th, you don't need to rush into it because those players are still available. I know it's frustrating. I know you're getting a little bit antsy, but they're trying to go out there and get a legitimate bat for the lineup. And that's not something you can really rush into if you're trying to do the trade route. I think being so active early on, signing Michael Wacha long-term, getting Jonathan India, now getting Michael Lorenzen, a couple minor league deal guys, that allowed them to be more patient with trying to get that middle of the order bat. So if they're patient and it pays off, I think it's all going to be worth it in the end. Aiden's question is, do you think Taylor Ward is the most likely middle of the order batsman? And if so, how much would it cost? I really do. I said this yesterday. I feel like Taylor Ward is just that guy they have circled. And if the Angels want to deal him, I think Kansas City would be the best option. And I do feel like you could have somebody included like a Michael Garcia, just because you've got the roster crunch in the infield with India and Massey. I feel like one of those guys might be playing third base, probably more so Jonathan India than Michael Massey. So if you traded Michael Garcia, you could package him with maybe a prospect or two at the minor league level. You're probably going to have to part ways with somebody like a Ben Kudrna, or maybe somebody like a Frank Mozzicato, maybe a Noah Cameron to get some pitching depth for the Angels organization. but I don't think it would be something that would absolutely derail your minor league system because Taylor Ward is a 30-year-old outfielder. He's only got another year of control. So I think the Royals understand that they don't need to mortgage the future for Taylor Ward, but I do think that price is going to come down, and I feel like he would be the most likely option for that middle of the order bat. Bobby Royals asked, would you consider using a six-man rotation for parts of the season, maybe lighten the load of Reagans, Waka, Lugo, and allow injury guys to ease in easier? That means, of course, Chris Bubich and Kyle Wright. I think it's possible, but probably more so late in the season. I'm talking more so August and September if the Royals are, of course, still in it, which I anticipate them to be. If you've got guys that are wearing down a little bit, we saw last year Seth Lugo hit a little bit of a wall. You got to watch out for Cole Reagans, too, with back-to-back years of a lot of innings. So I think, late August, September is when you could go with a six-man rotation. Who knows what guys will be available at that point in time. But I wouldn't expect it early on because part of the the portion of the season is that you were trying to build up some of those arms. And I do feel like this is one of those rotations that is going to need that help come September because you can't just bank on guys like Seth Lugo giving you 200-plus innings again and Cole Reagans, 200 innings and Michael Waka giving you 180, 190. You got to plan for that a little bit. So, I do think late in the season they could go with the six-man rotation if guys like Michael Lorenzen and Daniel Lynch would still be healthy. This one comes from CRKSOKC. With the report that the Royals previously held some interest in Nolan Arenado, do you think there's any chance the Royals circle back on him now that his trade market with the teams he wanted to go to hasn't materialized? Yeah, this popped up on my feed last night. It actually came out yesterday morning that it was from Jeff Jones, covers the Cardinals, looks like here for the Bellevue News. So I was pretty surprised that when Jeff Jones tweeted out that believed Kansas City was one of those teams that checked in on him at the winter meetings, but it was a long shot, and they didn't really feel like Nolan Arenado would want to go to Kansas City. The fact there was interest there does, raise my eyebrows a little bit because the contract has always been a part of this. It's not like the contract all of a sudden has snuck up on teams, and now they're going to be going for him. It was more so about his no-trade clause. And if the Royals were to circle back, they would be asking the Cardinals to eat a lot of money, and that's something, while they're trying to trim payroll, they just don't really want to do. But if you got down into that $12 to $15 million range, it would be an upgrade at third base. He's elite defensively. There has been a decline in the last 2 years offensively, but it's an upgrade over what you got last year. And I think he would be another guy you could plug in to the middle of the order. I just have my doubts that the Cardinals are going to want to pay so much of that contract, even if it meant getting some prospects in return. So I think they might try to circle back, but I still don't really put it as a very likely scenario, but would be interested to know if here in the next few weeks we hear that the Royals are still interested in a guy like Nolan Arenado. The Mizzler asks, what will come first, the end of the Taylor Ward trade rumors or the end of the universe? That has certainly been the theme, right, when it comes to Taylor Ward, because, he is somebody that has been a trade candidate now for the better part of 8 months. Like, the Angels were out of it by the deadline, thought he was a hot trade name, didn't trade him, thought at the winter meetings he'd be a trade candidate, didn't trade him. And now we're starting to see that maybe he could be traded again, but we don't really know. I still believe that he will be traded. That's where I lean toward right now. But again, I understand a lot of the fans' frustration that we get some rumors and then it goes away. We get some rumors and it goes away. So I'm going to bank on that he is traded before the start of spring training. Sam's question is, do you think the Royals could pull off a trade for one of the three Cardinals hitters, Lars Nootbaar, Nate Burleson, and Brendan Donovan? I'd prefer Donovan of the three, but all solid bats for the corner outfield. I think the Cardinals are trying to trim payroll and really build around those young guys. And those are three young guys that I feel like they want to keep intact. If the Royals were to go after them, I agree with you. I think Donovan would be the best option there. I just really have my doubts that they would be looking to move one of those guys. I think they're trying to move their more expensive players, get cheaper, kind of have a retooling, reloading year, and then maybe down the road spend a lot of money. But they put a lot of investment into Paul Goldschmidt and Nolan Arenado, and it didn't really result in much when it comes to postseason wins. So with those three guys, I think they're going to try to build around. I wouldn't put it as very likely that the Royals go out there and get them. Bryce's question is thoughts on Wilyer Abreu. I keep seeing his name attached to the Royals if the Red Sox decide to clear out a spot in their outfield. Gold Glove defender with some decent pop. Wonder what we'd have to give up. I would love the addition of Wilyer Abreu, but I think the most likely trade candidate up in Boston is Yoshida. I think that Masataka Yoshida is somebody that the Royals could look into, but I would be scared away by his inability to play the field. He's pretty much a DH only. The numbers are fine offensively, but you are going for a DH only. And I think that's something that would scare away the Royals a little bit because they like to have that defensive flexibility. But I would absolutely go for Wilyer Abreu over Yoshida if he was available. I just think he would cost a little bit more than Yoshida. Okay, let's take our first break here. When we come back, still a lot of questions to get to next on Locked On Royals. You are tuning to Locked On Royals and the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jack Johnson, and you can find me on Twitter or X at JohnnyJ_15. Want to give a shout out to the first sponsor today in Gametime. Now, Gametime has made it easier to get tickets for your favorite events with their new feature, Gametime Picks. The feature filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Recently, I was looking for tickets at an upcoming concert, and using the Gametime app with Gametime Picks, I found amazing deals and could see the view from my seat before buying. The super deal was particularly impressive, offering great seats at unbeatable prices. Plus, the app's all-in pricing shows the total cost up front with no surprise fees at checkout. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off on your first purchase. Those terms apply. So again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB, LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? It is game time. Next question here is going to be coming from Bobby Litt Jr. Do you think the Royals are trying to get in on the Santander free agent market, or have they started looking at a lesser outfield bat? I will stand by the belief that the Royals are going to be trading for their bat. I don't think we've gotten enough on the free agent market where the Royals have been interested enough. Jurickson Profar is somebody that I think a lot of people would like. I just see him returning to San Diego for the right price. Santander, to me, kind of what we just talked about when it came to Masataka Yoshida, he's really a DH only. And I don't think the Royals want to do that with the defensive flexibility they have in their lineup. To me, I think Santander, at this point in time, my gut would tell me Toronto. I think Toronto, for as much interest as they've had in so many different players, I think Santander is the guy they're going to want to go all in on. I could certainly see Detroit making a push if they lose out on Alex Bregman. But to me, I think Santander is probably heading north of the border to play for the Blue Jays this year. I don't get the sense that Kansas City is trying to go after Anthony Santander. Jason's question is, where would you guess the defensive positions that Massey, Garcia, and India end up? Good question. I think based off the likes here, a lot of people want to know that. If Garcia is still here, I think Garcia becomes that super utility guy that can play third, short, second, probably a little bit of the outfield as well. I think India would be the one to move to third base or left field. I think he's got a better ability to do so. I think Michael Massey's pretty much a second base only guy. If India's arm can really be built up, I like him over at third base, and then Garcia kind of becomes that bench role guy. But I just don't know if I want to move India or Massey to the outfield. That seems like a bit of a stretch to do considering the weakness in the arms. But I do think that Massey's the guy to stay at second. I think Garcia is more of the utility guy. And then I could see Jonathan India going over to third. Eli asks, what is your early 2025 season record prediction? Do we make it back to the playoffs? You know, right now, if you are feeling a little bit antsy about the offseason, I think the Royals should feel pretty good about what the rest of the AL Central has done. Cleveland has subtracted. Minnesota has not made any move. And Detroit, like Kansas City, has taken it a little bit slower when it comes to the free agent market. So you're kind of seeing the same teams out there. I mean, the White Sox might be the most active team so far, but they're just getting a lot of guys on one-year deals. I think they'll be better. As I've said before, I don't think it's going to be a situation where the Royals go 12-1 against the White Sox in 2025. But I do think they make it back to the postseason. And if they get that middle of the order bat and the bullpen gets shored up a little bit, I could see them being better than 86 and 76. I could see them getting closer to 90 wins, and I do think that would be good enough to win the division. I'm not there just yet, just because they don't have that middle of the order bat or have the bullpen shored up. So I'll go at this point in time 88 and 74. I think they would make one of the wild card spots. Slowpoke asked, what picks do you like the most in the 2025 draft that you take at 23, 28, 62, 73, and 98? Also, I know you can't trade comp picks. I don't know if they consider the pick Bobby got them a comp picks. I don't know, but would you think that the trade that the comp B pick or no, what you're getting, or would they trade the comp B pick or no? They could if it's what it took to get the middle of the order bat. I'll be honest with you. I know this probably won't be the best answer. I haven't done a deep enough dive yet on the upcoming Major League Baseball draft just because, college baseball hasn't gotten here yet. Once we get to that point, I definitely do more of a deep dive. So I'll more so focus on the last question you have there, trading that comp B pick. I would say no. I think they want to really have a lot of draft picks to stockpile here because along with building the big league level team, they still want to keep replenishing the farm system and getting it back to where it was in the early 2010s. Because if you do that, you don't have to spend as much in free agency. You have pieces to trade if you're trying to go all in. So right now, I would say no. I don't think they would trade that comp pick at some point this offseason. Danny asked, which of the following three will have the biggest offensive improvement in 2025? Melendez, Massey, or Garcia? Not best overall numbers, but improvement. I'm going to go Michael Massey. I think he's my breakout candidate for 2025. If he can stay healthy, I like what he's going to be able to do. I don't know if we're going to see the power numbers like running into 2025 home runs, but with the defense, I think the confidence we saw going into the postseason, hitting near the top of the order, you get him a little bit more protection. I think Michael Massey can be a 270 hitter, maybe get to that 310, 315 OBP, maybe a 105 to 110 OPS plus. I think he can have the most improvement. Melendez has the ceiling. I've just kind of run out of time in believing he is going to reach that ceiling. And Michael Garcia, I don't know if he's ever going to have the complete approach at the plate for him to have that significant improvement. Charles asked, it's pretty known that Alec Marsh will have a role one way or another in 2025, but are you nervous about his bad minor league numbers? I'm really not, because I thought when he went down to Omaha after his demotion, he looked pretty good. And then when he came back to Kansas City, he looked pretty good. I really like him out of the bullpen, though. I really do. I don't know if I would run him back at the number 5 spot. I think him being that swing guy that they've been talking about and they were searching for, though I think Michael Lorenzen gets penciled in to the rotation because I just don't see you paying $7 million for a swing guy. I think Michael Lorenzen will be the number 4, number 5 guy. I think Marsh's stuff can really play up, throwing 1 inning or 2 innings, and that can be a little bit of a weapon late in games, and especially in series where it's the Sunday getaway game. Your bullpen might be a little bit fried, and he could give you the 7th and the 8th inning. So that's the type of role I would love to see him in, but there's always a chance he could win a job in spring training. Jesse asked, would love to hear your feedback on Austin Hayes, and what do you think he would cost if he would be a fit in Kansas City? Gotten a lot of questions about Austin Hayes. Overall, I mean, his career has been pretty effective, I would say, for the most part. I like his defense. But last year, he took a step back offensively, went from Baltimore to Philadelphia on a 1-year deal. I'll never hate that type of deal. And with the state of the outfield, I think it would be worth considering. But for those out there that have thought, he's going to be somebody that could be the middle of the order bat, I don't think so. I think he could take the role that Garrett Hampson had on a 1-year deal, and you hope that he returns to 2023 form. But I'm not sure I would be counting on him returning to that 2023 form. He did battle a lot of injuries last year, so maybe that's the thing. But I wouldn't hate it. I'll tell you that. I don't know if he'd be that final guy I add in, but for a bench bat, for a role player, I'd absolutely take that type of deal on for a 1-year deal. Bobby Royals asked thoughts on a trade centered around Taylor Ward, and Michael Massey. I don't know, because of Luis Rengifo, if the Angels would be wanting to go out there and get Michael Massey. And I just said that I believe Michael Massey has the biggest improvement of those 3 players we brought up. I think that the Angels would be looking more so for pitching and then maybe more of a flexible defender. And I think that's why Michael Garcia, with the years of control, his ability on the base paths, his defensive ability, to me, that just feels like Michael Garcia would be a better trade candidate than Michael Massey. And I think the Royals really like Massey, so they'd have to be blown away by an offer to include him in that deal. Let's get to one more here before we hit break. Jonathan asked, thoughts on Seth Lugo for Kobe Mayo as the main pieces of a trade. Orioles need pitching and have no room for Mayo. We only have Lugo for 1 more year before he's presumably gone. Yeah, I just don't see the Royals trading Seth Lugo. I know that Kobe Mayo is a good prospect, but the Royals see themselves in a win now mode, and Seth Lugo's a big part about that. I mean, it wouldn't have made much sense to bring back Michael Wacha, add Lorenzen, and then trade the guy who was a Cy Young finalist last year. So to me, I mean, that might be good enough to get it done if the Royals really were interested in Kobe Mayo, but I kind of think they view Seth Lugo as an untouchable guy right now, and they want him for this year. And if the Royals are out of it by the deadline, then you'd be looking into trading him for maybe some younger prospects. Okay, it's like our final break of the show. When we come back, we'll wrap up this Mailbag Friday on Locked On Royals. You are tuning to Locked On Royals and the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jack Johnson, and you can find me on Twitter or X at JohnnyJ_15. Want to give a shout out to our final sponsor today in FanDuel. Also, our title sponsor. From big upsets to game-winning drives, the NFL playoffs are better with FanDuel. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. The FanDuel app gives you everything you need for live bets, same-game parlays, and so much more. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today and get started with $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. For my pick, I'll go with the Chargers and the Texans tomorrow. I'll take the over on receiving yards for Ladd McConkey. Also think the Chargers win that game, so I'd sprinkle down a little bit more on the Chargers money line going on the road in Houston and knocking out the Texans. Let's get to our final set of questions between Twitter and YouTube. This one comes from RB Carr. Which of Daniel Lynch, Sam Long, and Angel Serpa do you expect to have the most high leverage role next year, since Bubic is likely headed to the rotation? I think Daniel Lynch will be the long relief guy. Sam Long, middle innings. I think Serpa probably has the best chance just because of his high velocity, high powered stuff. I would like for him to use that slider a little bit more so he has the swing and miss. But to me, I think Angel Serpa would take on a little bit more of that seventh inning role over guys like Daniel Lynch and Sam Long. Casey Fan asked, Nolan Arenado, Whit Merrifield, Anthony Santander, are any of them realistic signings? The funny part about it, I think Whit Merrifield is the least likely of the bunch to come back to Kansas City. I think just that ship has sailed. I don't see him returning unless it would be the very, very end of his career. Of those options, though, I would say Nolan Arenado just because they were rumored to be interested, and the other two guys, they haven't been rumored to be interested in all offseason long. So I'll go with Nolan Arenado for my answer there. Prepsley asks, please make Cag stop pitching and Foley buy into hitting. If he hits the peak as a pitcher, it's at a reliever at best. While hitting, we could have a consistent 40-bomb guy. I know that Jack Caglione said that the Royals told him he can be a two-way player. They might entertain it for a second, but I think everybody knows, and I think deep down Jack Caglione understands that his highest ceiling is only going to be reached at the plate. Just because in college, I mean, he had the stuff for college, right? And he still wasn't an elite level arm. It'd be much different if he was. I don't see him being a Shohei Ohtani type, and I think that we need to have players stop trying to emulate Shohei Ohtani because he's a unicorn. I don't see him being replicated. He can win a Cy Young and win an MVP award offensively. So for Jack Caglione, I think the Royals know that the most important thing is developing him at the plate, and I believe they're going to put their full focus into that. Next one comes from YouTube, and it is another one on Jack Caglione. It's from Giovanni. Do you see a world where Jack Caglione is in the Royals' everyday lineup and pitches in the back end of the bullpen with that 99-mile-an-hour fastball? No, I really don't see a world in which he gets called up and he's pitching. I think what would probably happen if you ever see him on the mound is if the Royals were in a blowout and he was able to go out there and throw one inning. But even then, like, do you risk that for a guy that would hopefully be such a pivotal piece of your lineup? It's why we'll probably never see Bobby Witt Jr. up there. It's why we've never seen Salvador Perez go out there and throw off the mound. At least I don't remember Salvador Perez ever pitching out there. You have utility guys. You have bench guys go out there and throw. But I don't see a world in which the Royals really put a lot of focus into Jack Caglione being a pitcher. So I would say they just hope for him to be great at the plate, and the focus will be getting him all figured out and matured at the plate. By the way, did get this on Twitter. Caglione, speaking of him with our last two questions, Jack Caglione, Blake Mitchell, and Carter Jensen will all be at spring training for the Royals in 2025. So good news for us. Hopefully we can get an interview with Jack down in Surprise, because we will be there next month. Jordan's question is, I've heard this in a couple of videos now, but if we get some more bullpen depth, why would we move Ursig out of the closer role for someone else? It would more so be that they could use Lucas Ursig as the fireman, because I think baseball has transformed a little bit into your best reliever should get the toughest situation. How many times in the postseason or in the regular season late did we see Lucas Ursig come in when the game was on the line? That could be in the 6th inning, that could be in the 7th inning, 8th, or 9th. So if you go out there and get a closer, it allows them to be more flexible with Ursig, where they're not having to roll the dice with somebody in the 9th inning. That's the only reason, though. I think they want Ursig to be the closer, but if they were to go out there and get a Kenley Jansen or a David Robertson or a Carlos Estevez, it allows them to use a guy like Lucas Ursig in a big spot in the 6th or the 7th, and then still have somebody like of the guys I just mentioned in the 9th inning to lock things down. Next one here will be from William. Will Michael Lorenzen be a two-way player? Was it even discussed? I think it was more so about the agent leveraging and trying to force the Royals to get a deal done. I think him saying, I'll be a two-way player. And I think it was kind of unique where it was, he said it wouldn't be for like an every other game occurrence. Like, I think he would say, I'd be a two-way player, could come in, could pinch hit, this and that. But I think it was more so of a ploy to get a deal done through free agency, which the Royals eventually struck a deal with Michael Lorenzen. I would be super surprised if Lorenzen was a two-way player for the Royals in 2025. This one comes from Bev. What are we going to see or do with MJ? I feel like he's just getting pushed to the bench. I right now would say that he is going to be one of the bench bats. I think that having that power from the left side is not a bad thing. It takes pressure off him, and I still believe the Royals add an outfield bat before the start of spring training. So I do think right now he would be a guy that moves toward the end of the bench. Let's see what else we got here for a final mailbag question. Steve's question is, what about the Padres free agent left fielder Jurickson Profar? Talked about him a little bit. I just think he returns to San Diego. I think that some teams are scared away by the regression and that he was so good in San Diego because of the guys he was surrounded by. You put him in a lineup that doesn't have as much firepower, he might regress to what he looked like a little bit in Colorado. But in my opinion, I do think that he is going to be destined to go back to San Diego. And looks like the last one here comes from Brett. Do you think that Ryan Helsley would be a good fit for the Royals to trade for? Although we have guys like Ursig, Harvey, etc., I think we really lacked a big-time closer. I just don't see the Cardinals trading Ryan Helsley. Going all the way back to, I believe it was Thanksgiving, there was some MLB article where that was entertained. Like the Royals would be trading one of their top prospects. I think it was Blake Mitchell included, and Ben Kudner for Ryan Helsley. I don't think you need to do that because I think Lucas Ursig would be this team's closer, and then you build around Ursig. I understand that Ryan Helsley would really make this bullpen a lot better than it is, but I also think he would be a very expensive type of closer when trading away guys, and I don't think the Royals want to do that, and I don't think the Cardinals are going to trade Helsley right now. Wouldn't surprise me, though, if a deal was struck with some team out there around the trade deadline. Well, that's going to do it for another edition of Locked On Royals and the Locked On Podcast Network. I have been your host, Jack Johnson. Thank you for making Locked On Royals your first listen today. For your second, find Locked On MLB as baseball guru Sully brings a daily blend of humor and baseball, keeping you updated on every rumor and story throughout the offseason. Find Locked On MLB on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. We'll be off this weekend unless a move is made, but until Monday or Tuesday, you take it easy, Kansas City.